Digitally written text is all around us, but those neatly arranged letters hide secrets. Just like in face-to-face communication, also while typing, our body sends signals that go beyond the simple choice of words. However, text tools today filter all these signals and leave us with perfectly polished text. With our design experiment, we put our users in a tight corner and we asked them to answer fairly personal questions about their family, relationships, childhood memories, and life regrets. Writing about these topics is not easy, and all the hesitation and emotion was caught in the keyboard. Digital body language is a text processor that detects different typing behaviors and translates them into typographical distortions. A long pause between two words generates a larger whitespace. Letter tracking is controlled by the average typing speed. Deleted characters won't be visible, but they will increase the size of the next word being typed. Finally, the longer you hesitate inside a word, the lower its opacity will turn. We developed this concept having in mind all those people that every day rely on technology for work or to maintain personal relationships. For designers, the result of our work can bring reflection on how the way we shape technology may expand human expression.
Hi, everybody. I'm Agnieszka Billewicz, and you can also call me Bila, like the supermarket. It's way easier. And I'm an interaction designer, and in my work, I do a variety of digital artifacts and digitally mediated communication, mostly in a commercial context, focusing on the intelligent interfaces from large-scale medical equipment through conversational interfaces to car HMIs. But I also spent a large chunk of my time doing non-commercial projects like this one, like a procedurally generated game with flying pickles, or a lamp that you have to teach, or ice-based art, and, as you have seen, a word processor that takes into account your process of writing. This is a project I did in collaboration with two of my friends, Tor and Bianca. One thing that you should probably know about me is that I love asking questions. You know this game when you answer a question with a question and it becomes like kind of a long flow and so on and so on. Not to brag, but I'm pretty good at this. And yes, I know what you're thinking. I was a pretty irritating child, yes. But because I love asking questions so much, I thought that this is something I could talk to you about today. And I could talk to you about the creative process that can be led by questions. And there's a very specific way I ask questions on the example of this project, digital body language. And when we started working on the project, like day one, we get into the room, we didn't know at all what we want to do. But we had this theme of errors of translation. And from there on, we needed to work. But we didn't really have any questions or any kind of approach that we wanted to take. Instead, we jumped straight to it and decided to start with sketches and experimentations. It was interesting to me to hear what Kuba just said about how technology is a tool and you never engage with technology before you know what to do. For me, it's a bit different. For me, technology is a material. Material through engagement with which I figure out what I want to do. So for example, day two, we had a sketch. We had for an algorithm that generates untranslatable words, words that don't exist, words that maybe explain feelings that are hard to translate to others. So imagine this, when you have an idea, it's fairly easy for most of the people to sit down with a pencil and start sketching something out, doodling. We often do this when we're on the phone. We just doodle stuff even before we know what we're actually trying to achieve, even before we see the end process, and knowing that in a minute we are going to crumble the paper and throw it all away. This is kind of a way I engage with technology as well. Do something that is a quick sketch, but it's a sketch in technology. And through this sketch, questions come. So after we, for example, did the sketch, we sat down together and we listed all the possible questions that this sketch has opened. Like, how can we explore materiality of language through technology? How can algorithms express abstract concepts? Or why do we tend to find sense in nonsense? We never really expected to keep the first sketch, merely to feed and inform the inspiration for the second one. And those sketches, even though you engage with technology as a material, you don't necessarily need to have specific skills like coding and programming. This is an example of a sketch where it's a set of poetry created by Google Translate. And it doesn't require any kind of coding experience. It was literally us taking the idea of why do we keep finding sense in nonsense, and what's up with those mistranslations, and why do we find sense of them, and thinking about how some of the first sketch words were feelings that are hard to translate. This time we started with feelings from normal feelings like grief or sadness or being proud, took Wikipedia definitions of those feelings and started translating them over and over through different languages in Wikipedia until the text got distorted. And from there on, we all, again, got a set of questions about how can deformed translations be used as art, or what is so human about things lost in translation. So I guess you already, by those two examples, kind of got the point of sketching with technology as sketching experiences, just to open up more and more questions. And one fun thing about working that way in a team is that it's really easy to collaborate that way. Where if you collaborate with a few different artists, often there's one person that can bring something else to the table. Like the day when I came to the room and my friend Tore already had this big projection up in the room where the words would be generated and visually displayed on the projector. And as I looked, I realized that the algorithm just takes synonyms of each word to pick a new synonym, and it would go on and on and on, and you could reset it any time you wanted, and you could basically see in time and space how fast the meaning of the word gets devalued and how fast the equivalent words turn out not to be really equivalent, and how fast the words get detached from the context. And it could easily be translated in different mediums, so taking the same idea but doing it just a bit differently. So this is an example of sketch of dictionary of untranslatable words, where you can search for a word that only exists in one language. Like, for example, utepils is a Norwegian word that is really hard to translate, but it takes into account something like, first sunny day and having a beer on a very first sunny day of the year. And instead of providing you with a definition, it provides you with excerpts of Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram shots that had been hashtagged with these words, or maybe that they have the word in the title, and like just searching if this exact word can be translated without really providing a definition or translation, and how can a context express a meaning without a definition. So after coming back to the project that we started with, the project that you started in the beginning, when you do this kind of series of sketching with technology and a series of experiments, at the end we had a large list of questions that we thought are very interesting. But we also had already this kind of theme that maybe emerged between the sketches. Like in our case, it was the theme of the defamiliarization, taking something that we are very familiar with, the form of a dictionary or a form of a poetry set, and making it somehow strange or unfamiliar. At the same time, we knew we had our own preferences that we had from the start, like for example, that we wanted to work with slow technology, so the movement that embraces the presence of time. And we sat down with all those questions to figure out what is the question that we want to actually answer with our art, or maybe the question that we want to ask with our art. And we soon became mesmerized by this idea of multimodality of communication, and how the meaning of the communication, meaning of words, meaning of language, can be stored in so many different modalities, especially when we talk. This is normal for us when we think about body language, when we think about the context, when we think about what you know about the scene, but also for all the sketches, you see how those modalities can be very different in the digital realm. So our question that we decided to go with was, how can we design multimodal communication for the digital? How can we design digital communication that provides more than just needed? And basically, how can we maybe inspire other artists and designers to think about how we approach design process? And in this case, we started with the keyboard and the input of the communication, thinking about how different way we use the keyboard, the embodied experience of typing, can be translated into a more multimodal experience. And only from there on, when we had the word processor, we thought about the general, the biggest picture of what we want to achieve. So maybe a bit on the contrary to what Kuba said, but also different than, if you remember the presentation of May yesterday, when she talked about her project Collider and how she sketched from the beginning this kind of user journey through the exhibition, focusing from the start on kind of the feelings and experiences that she wants the audience to feel throughout the exhibition. For us, it was exactly the opposite. So we had the word processor, but only at the end the bigger questions came of what is actually the different kind of feelings that we want to involve in this experience. How can we get the person who's experiencing the piece to really feel different emotions, and how to make them maybe feel things that would be somehow substantial and somehow made them emotional enough so it's visible in the text that they're typing. Can we anger them? Can we make them feel a bit sad? Can we somehow put emotion and hesitation and reflection into the act of typing that they're doing? So at the end, what this experience shaped itself out to be is that we provided a very secluded place on a conference. It was Push conference, where this one table in the dark was standing, and we engaged the audience through a conversational interface, where you could maybe sit down in the corner and start talking to a conversational interface that would ask you about what you think about the nature of digital communication, what's your name, and through this first teaching on an example how the user, how he's or she's supposed to behave in the experiment, and then building a familiarity to be able to ask questions that may be a bit more personal, like what's your earliest memory, or what's your relationship to your mother? What is the one thing that you did in your life that you regret and you would like to take it back? Then from then on, it's not only about the word processor that it is, but only from there on we thought about the experience of, okay, what happens with the output? The output is immediately printed, and you as a user have the chance to either take it with you or hang it in a gallery behind you on a wall where people have expressed their feelings, where you can go around and try to interpret and over-interpret the answers of others, and where we can see more of the humanity behind our digital communication in a spatial experience. Yeah, so basically that's what we did. That's my last slide, because basically I wanted to talk to you today about this process and how sometimes you can invert starting at the end or starting at the beginning, and invert coming from very specific things to big questions, but mostly about how sometimes we don't need to have questions, but we can ask them through sketches. We can ask them through working with technology, and we can ask them through experiencing technology as a material. And that's it. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, you can find me on Twitter if you have any questions, or if you ever want to talk or ask questions, because I like questions mostly.